Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. We are going to be focusing on this study. We're going to be studying on Jezebel. Just really quickly, it was a tough study for me personally. She is covered in the book of First Kings as well as Second Kings, but she's kind of scattered all over First Kings. So I pray that we're able to, as much as we can, able to get, just understand who this woman is. And I'm going to try my best in the verses that I picked that I got from First Kings. I'm going to try my best, and I pray that these verses we will read make sense. And if there's any confusion, if there's any questions, please feel free, and we can work it out. We can try to read through it and get the context of it. Like I said, it's kind of scattered all over the place, but I think it's going to make sense. So we're going to start off in the book of First Kings, chapter 16, and we are going to start in verse 29 to 33. Sister June, did you want to start us off? It's First Kings, chapter 16.
Sure. I think Melinda is volunteering to read.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't see hands. Okay. Awesome. Thank you, Melinda.
Okay. 1 Kings 16, verses 29 to 33. And in the 38th year of Asa, king of Judah, began Ahab, the son of Omri, to reign over Yahusha, or Israel. And Ahab, the son of Omri, reigned over Israel in Samaria 22 years. And Ahab, the son of Omri, did evil in the sight of Yahuah above all that were before him. And it came to pass, as if it had been a light thing for him to walk in the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, that he took to wife Jezebel, the daughter of Ethbaal, king of the Zidonians, and went and served Baal and worshipped him. And he reared up an altar for Baal in the house of Baal, which he had built in Samaria. And Ahab made a grove, and Ahab did more to provoke Yahuah Elohim of Yahusha to anger than all the kings of Yahusha that were before him. In his day, 30 up to 33. I thought 34 was really, really important also, but I'll stop at 33.
It's okay, sis. We can also read 34.
Okay. All right. In his days did Hiel the Bethelite build Jericho. He laid the foundation thereof in Abiram, his firstborn, and set up the gates thereof in his youngest son Zakul, according to the word of Yahuah, which he spake by Joshua the son of Nun. There's a lot in here. There's a lot in these particular verses. Ahab was Omri's son. Omri was the king prior to Ahab. And he did evil in the eyes of Yah and did even worse than the kings before him. And we can find that in 1 Kings, the 16th chapter, and the 25th verse. Ahab was king over Yahusha for 22 years, and he did evil in Yah's sight like the preceding kings. Jeroboam, he was the first king of Israel after it split into the two kingdoms, with Israel taking 10 tribes and Judah taking 2 tribes, which was Judah and Benjamin. Okay, so now when we get over to 31, verse 31, it tells us that that it came to pass as if it had been a light thing for him to walk in the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, that Ahab took to wife Jezebel. All this evil was going on. Nobody was worshiping the Father like they should. So it was like an easy thing. It wasn't nothing that anybody would be convicted of in anything. For him to take Jezebel, the daughter of Ethbaal, king of the Zidonians, as his wife. Now, she was the daughter of Ethbaal. Now, first of all, her name means Baal is exalted, or Baal is husband, or it can mean unchaste. Her father's name, Ethbaal, means with Baal. So, I mean, these were Baal worshiping people. It was part of their ancestry to worship Baal. And she was queen, so she became the queen of Yahusha. And Ahab, he went and served Baal right along with her, not following the laws, statutes, and commandments of Yah. He went right along with her, serving and worshiping Baal. Now he established an altar for Baal. He set up the sacred trees or poles, which are called groves, pertaining to this entity, this idolatry also. And he did more. What the word tells us that he even did more to provoke Yahuah Elohim than the kings of Yahusha before him. So it's like each one did worse than the one right before them. Now, interesting, it says in 34, verse 34, that in the days of Hiel of Bethlehem, he began to build Jericho back up, lay the foundations of it, and all of that. His name means God lives, or El lives. So he rebuilt Jericho, but there was a curse against Jericho that Joshua had pronounced. Joshua pronounced that curse in Joshua 6:26. When Jericho was destroyed, a curse was pronounced upon the rebuilding. Joshua said that the man who should do so would lay the foundation in his oldest son and set up the gates in his youngest son. And this is exactly what was happening at that particular time. So even though it shows me that even though all of this was going on, Jericho was being built, there was somebody coming along being named after the father instead of after Baal and everything. And you know, the father always has a remnant in whatever he does. So I just found that interesting that that was mentioned. And so that curse was fulfilled that Joshua had spoken before. And, you know, we've been talking about the Father's word does not return unto him void, but it accomplishes that which he pleases and it prospers in the thing whereto he sent it. And look at that. As surely as his word is spoken at that appointed time, that word comes to pass. Praise Yah.
Absolutely. Praise Abba. Excellent summary. You've touched on all the points. Just to kind of piggyback on what Amalinda just summarized in the verses, Sister Diane, we just read chapter 16, verses 29 to 34. So, you know, just praise Abba. But you know, it's interesting because it's very important. And thank you for summarizing it so, you know, just in depth like that, because it's important to know a little bit of the history. It's important to know who Ahab was and who his father was. And I wanted to mention something just to piggyback on what Amalinda said, but she pretty much summarized it so well. Something that it's just so interesting in verse 33 is that Ahab did more. It says, Ahab did more to provoke Yahuah, Elohim of Israel, to anger than all the kings of Israel that were before him. And again, like it's listed here, like just right off the bat, you know, he married his wife, the Jezebel, you know, a woman who was after Baal, and then he not only married Jezebel, but he also served Baal and he worshipped him. Then he goes and he builds an altar for Baal, and then he goes and makes a grove. So this, this is Ahab. We're getting to know who Ahab is. One thing that I wanted to read, it's going to be in Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 12 through 15, because this is why Ahab, like what he was doing was so evil in the eyes of Yahuah, because of what he tells us in Deuteronomy. Can I get a volunteer to read that verse? It's in Deuteronomy chapter 6.
I'll read for you.
Okay. So 12 through 15.
And that was chapter 6?
Yes.
Okay. Deuteronomy chapter 6, 12 to 14. Be on guard, lest you forget Yahuah, who brought you out of the land of Mizraim, or Egypt, from the house of bondage. Fear Yahuah your Elohim and serve him and swear by his name. Do not go after other mighty ones, the mighty ones of the peoples who are all around you. Did I read the right thing?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So basically the father was saying don't do it.
And can you also read 15?
Oh, yes. For Yahuah your Elohim is a jealous El in your midst, lest the displeasure of Yahuah your Elohim burn against you, then he shall destroy you from the face of the earth.
Sorry, go ahead, sister. But I'm sorry, did you want to make a comment?
Oh, I did already. He was so basically Yah here was re-emphasizing the commandment, really, and kind of also shedding some light to the consequence if they do otherwise. Like, so he was telling them, you know, you know, follow me. If not, and so we are seeing some of those consequences as the generations, like an apple. They say, what is it? An apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, and in this case, it just kept rolling and getting in all kinds of filth and getting more and more rotten.
Amen.
Yeah,
No,
a
it's just, you
diseased
know,
tree.
amen. And it's just important. I think this is one thing I personally took from this study and kind of focus on is the Father. Yahuwah, he loves us. He has commandments for us to follow. And this man, this King Ahab, he has, he goes and he does these things that are against Yahuwah. So I just wanted to point that out. We can resume the readings. We can now jump into 1 Kings chapter 18. Shalom, Sister Robbie. If I can get a volunteer. And there's going to be a lot of jumping around, so I apologize about that.
Would you like to read, Sister Robbie?
Okay, sure. Okay, and it reads, and it came to pass after many days that the word of Yahuah came to Eliyahu in the 3rd year, saying, Go, show yourself unto Achav, and I will send rain upon the earth. And Eliyahu went to show himself unto Achav, and there was a sore famine in Shamaron, and Achav called Obadiah, which was the governor of his house. Now Obadiah feared Yahuah greatly, for it was so when Jezebel cut off the prophets of Yahuah, that Obadiah took 100 prophets and hid them by 50 in a cave, and fed them with bread and water. That's from the Sefer. That was from the Sefer Bible.
Okay.
Okay, Sister Robbie, what are your thoughts?
Well, what I'm seeing here is that Eliyahu, it gives us a time period in the third year that he went to Achav and he told him that I will send rain upon the earth, that he knew he had the power from Yahuah to do this at a certain time, that he's going to bring this rain. And then he went to show himself unto this wicked king at that time of Israel. And he told him that, look, there's this famine going on. And then there was another person mentioned that was very faithful, possibly a prophet named Obadiah in the Sefer, in the Hebrew, that he was the governor of his house, and that he had this great fear of Yahuah, and that he even protected the prophets from Jezebel. You know how she would want to kill the prophets, that he hid Yahuah's prophets in a cave, and it was 100 of them, and he hid them by 50 in his cave. He risked his life to protect Yahuah's prophets because he, was a righteous man. So that's the background of the situation.
Yeah, so thank you, Sister Robbie. So we have so Elijah, which is a prophet, and we've read about Elijah in chapter 17, when Amalinda did the beautiful she guided us through the study in chapter 17 with Elijah and the widow in Zarephath. This is an account here with Elijah. Uh, and it's interesting though, because Elijah here comes to Ahab, and now he comes to Ahab, and like you had already said, he speaks to him, and he excuse me, I was just reading verse 14. And then he just tells him he's going to send rain upon the earth. But what's interesting is that Ahab speaks to Obadiah, and Obadiah, from my reading, I just wanted to kind of clarify this, is that he is the governor. He's the governor of Ahab. So, and it's interesting because, like you said, Sister Robbie, with Obadiah, he feared Yahuah. He feared Yahuah, and and as Jezebel was out to, she was on a mission to take those who followed Yahuah, his prophets. He went and, she went and did these things, but, Obadiah, his fear for Yahuah, he went and it says here that he hid them by 50 in a cave. So, yeah, so I just wanted to clarify that. But yes, Obadiah, praise Abba, he feared Yahuah, and he was able to, the fear of Yahuah allowed him to do something good for him. Yes, Sister June?
So what does that mean? Because so it says it took 100 prophets and hid them by 50 in a cave. So does that mean because 50 plus 50 is 100. So does that mean there was like two caves and half the prophets were in one and half the other? I was just curious. Sister Diane has her hand up too. Did you have a comment, sis?
I had put it up for the read, but you know, in my version, it doesn't specify if they were in two separate caves. But the cave could have been large enough, you know, for them to not to be able to be seen. Um, it was smart that he divided them up. I believe 50 is the number of a legion, what they would call a legion. So and so you know, I guess he's like being smart by not having them all together. You know, it was the hundreds being smart. You know, and it's like we're looking at like 100 prophets. Like that's a lot of prophets. Um, and it
Mm-hmm.
takes me back to Samuel. Um, I believe it was. He had a school of prophets. So, you know, Samuel come before kings. So um, these prophets could very well have been like prophets in training. Not that it's even all that important, but it's just the idea that it was 100 of them, and it was important enough for scripture to mention it. Another thing that's so beautiful about this and so powerful, you know, in terms of our Yahuah, is that he enabled Obadiah to feed them bread and water. You know, we're looking at 100 men, um, and he's feeding them. So, how much bread and how much water would that be, you know, per man? And it reminds me of what is it, Yahuah, the provider? What's the one? Is it Nisi? You know, like Yahuah is our provider. He actually provided um, Obadiah with this because someone had to carry that water. Someone had to bake the bread. So it's like no matter what odds come against Yahuwah's children or his prophets or his children, he's able to provide and take care of us. It also reminds me of the three Jewish boys that went before Nebuchadnezzar and Daniel, and it's like he took care of them, you know, with the vegetarian, and I think it was some scriptures read mush or whatever, but they had very little sustenance along with water, and they managed to be strong and to thrive. So I just see this once again as him providing, you know. And then, well, Jezebel, well, she didn't, not to go get ahead or anything like that, but she didn't win over. The victory was not hers because Jehovah, he still had um, Obadiah there, you know, to hide these prophets in a cave.
Um, thank you, sister. Um, that was,
Amen.
that was wonderful. Yeah, that's wonderful. It's interesting that, like in the beginning, how you started off with saying it's smart of him to have done it that way with a 50 in a cave. Um, and, I was actually also wondering, in chapter 17, as we have read that Elijah the Tishbite, um, Yahuwah had told him um, to go I guess to go and hide in the brook of Cherith. So I'm wondering, this is right prior to chapter 18. So I'm wondering if the father was trying to protect Elijah at that time by telling him go and hide in this brook, and then that's when he had the ravens to go feed him and give him that. So it's interesting that it had. I'm just wondering if that's the reason why he had him do that, to protect him from Jezebel.
Oh,
So
I definitely feel that that was the reason to protect, you know, them against her. Yeah, because you know she cut him off, you know. Yeah. I think she cut him off by, we don't really know exactly how she cut them off. At least, I'm not with what I see at this moment, but um, I'm sure that's it. It was for their safety from her. Yes.
My version says that she cut down the prophets of Yahuah. So I was like, I have this image of she's walking around with a machete or something. But um, and then thank you for answering my question too. I should have just looked down in my own translation because it says 52 a cave, which is a lot clearer for me.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it sounds like it would have been a scary time to be a prophet, but maybe they weren't scared because they were Miniyah and they knew that the Father would protect them.
Well, in this KJV, it does have a reference for that word cut, and it actually says to sever. But I mean, even a sever, that could be with a knife or, physical, like cut them off, to where they couldn't proceed into her land or anything like that. It could have been cut off with, some type of road barrier, or they could have actually been, some of them could have been killed or whatever. But
Hmm.
yeah,
She was like an vengeance.
yeah.
Um, okay, we can continue on with the readings, and thank you, sisters, for all your comments and input. I was thinking, I made a mistake. I didn't include these readings, but I wanted to just touch on these next verses, starting in verse 5 all the way to 15. Uh, if someone would like to go ahead and read those verses.
Okay, I'll read. All right. Okay, so we're looking at still
Yeah, chapter
16, we're looking at 18, 5 through 15.
yes.
Okay, okay. And Ahab said unto Obadiah, go into the land unto all fountains of water and unto all brooks, peradventure we may find grass to save the horses and mules alive, that we lose not all the beasts. So they divided the land between them to pass throughout it. Ahab went one way by himself, and Obadiah went another way by himself. And as Obadiah was in the way, behold, Elijah met him, and he knew him and fell on his face and said, art thou my Lord Elijah? And he answered him, I am. Go, tell thy Lord, behold, Elijah is here. And he said, what have I sinned, that thou wouldest deliver thy servant unto the hand of Ahab to slay me? And he says, as Yahuah the Elohim liveth, there is no nation or kingdom whither my Lord have not sent to seek thee. And when they said, he is not there, he took an oath of the kingdom and nation. They found him not. And now when thou sayest, go, tell thy Lord, behold, Elijah is here. And it shall come to pass, as soon as I am gone from you, that the spirit of Yahuah shall carry thee wherever I know not, whither I know not. And so when I come and tell Ahab, and he cannot find you, he shall slay me. But I, your servant, fear Yahuah from my youth. Was it not told, my Lord, what I did when Jezebel slew the prophets of the Lord? How I hid 100 men of the Lord's prophets by 50 in a cave and fed them with bread and water? There is our answer. And now thou sayest, go, tell the Lord, behold, Elijah is here, and he shall slay me. And Elijah said, as Yahuah of hosts liveth, before whom I stand, I will surely show myself unto him today. that was really quite a bit there. So on the way, for Obadiah, on the way for him to do what Ahab told him to do, which was to get water, preserve water, get water for the horses and everything. Obadiah was met by Elijah, and Elijah wanted Obadiah to tell Ahab that he was there, but but Obadiah didn't want to do it, because if Ahab had come out to meet Elijah and Elijah wasn't there, then Obadiah feared for his life, because this is so wonderful, because Obadiah knew that um, he knew that Yahuah had a tendency to move Ahab around anywhere he was, anywhere he wanted him to be. And that's a very interesting concept within himself, about the omnipotence of Yahuah, that he does what he wants to do. But anyhow, Elijah just told him, don't be afraid, to just go ahead, and tell him, just go ahead and do what he told him to do. But the fear comes out, and our question is really answered there in verse 13, when Obadiah says, was it not told uh, uh, what Jezebel did, that she slew the prophets of Yahuah, and how I hid 100 men, by 50 in a cave, and fed them with bread. And now you said, go. He was afraid, basically. He was afraid to confront Ahab. But Elijah told him, don't be afraid, because Yahuah was going to show himself strong. So, here's a brave man, Obadiah. And but in the same token, even in our bravidity, even in us being brave, sometimes fear comes. We get afraid sometimes when we hear what he wants us to do. And these are righteous people. Obadiah was a righteous man. He feared. Uh, so, that's just something else to look at. And our question was also answered in verse 13. Amen.
Beautiful. Amen. Praise Allah. Thank you, sister.
Amen. My translation says killed, and you're in KGV says slew, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Slew the prophet. Praise Allah.
Yes.
Thank you. That was a great summary. Beautiful. It's, I mean, it's like you had said, Obadiah was, he was a righteous man, and he feared Yahuwah, and he did he did the right thing before the Father. And then it's funny, that's interesting that Ahab comes to him and says, go tell, Ahab. But he's like, wait a minute. In verse 10, it says, as Yahuwah God, as Yahuwah Elohim liveth, there is no nation or kingdom whither my Lord hath not sent to seek thee. So it sounds like Ahab was searching was looking for Elijah. And then, so, Obadiah's like, now you're telling me to go tell him? And he's been looking for you? Oh no. Didn't you hear what I did? So it's just interesting. But it was, thank you, it was a beautiful read. And then if I can just get someone to read the next verses, 16 to 18.
I can read this.
Thank you.
All right, verse 16 to 18 in chapter 18. Obadiah then went to meet Ahab and informed him, and Ahab went to meet Elijah. And it came to be when Ahab saw Elijah that Ahab said to him, "Is that you, O disturber of Israel?" And he answered, "I have not disturbed Israel, but you and your father's house, in that you have forsaken the commandments of Yahuah, and you have followed the Baals." You know, and that's really interesting here because uh, in the first verse we see that Obadiah did follow through, and it didn't look like he had any kickback from Ahab. Ahab got the message and went immediately to Elijah, and then he's approaching Elijah saying, uh, you know, "It's you, disturber of Israel." Um, and it's interesting how sometimes people have the wrong perspective and they will make statements, right? And sometimes it takes the man of Yah to speak to what really is the reality here. Like, nah, it's not me who's disturbing Israel. It's you, because you're not following the Father's commandments, and it's evident in their names. They put, how, the Hebrews would put the Father's name in their names. They would end it in their names with Yah. And I think it's Obadiah, right? And here we have, you know, somebody coming along. It was a very hypocritical statement. And so um, Elijah was able to boldly, that was a very bold response, because here Ahab was looking for him, and he approaches him like, "You're the disturber," and Elijah's making it plain, and putting it in the father's perspective, if you will, because it was all about um, following the father's law, and that's what needs to be righted here. Sorry, that was a lot of comments for
No,
3 verses.
that was no. That's just the reason why I wanted to touch on these verses, um, because I think it's important. Because, like you said, Elijah comes and meets Ahab, and then Ahab's like, "Oh, here you are, the the one that's causing all this trouble." Like, he's not even aware that what he is doing is causing, it's it's offending the father. That's what it sounds like to me. Like, he's like, "You are the one that's causing this trouble, Elijah. Like, you know you're troubling Israel." But like you said in verse 18, he puts him in his place and says, "It's you, thy father's house, in that ye have forsaken the commandments of Yahuah, and thou hast followed after." But I have here in mine, King James Version, it says Baalim. So it's just like he puts him in his place and says, "This, you are the one." And I know we read Deuteronomy chapter 6, but let's see here. I'm gonna just go back to it, and I wanted to reference the first 7 verses because this is important. Again, how he, what's it called? Ahab reminds him, like, "You have forsaken the commandments." Like, what does the father say about the commandments? Chapter 6, verse 1, and I can read 1 through 7. It says, this is what the father literally said, for all of us. It says, "Now these are the commandments, thy statutes, and the judgments with Yahuah your Elohim commanded to teach you, that ye might do them in the land whither you go to possess it, that thou mightest fear Yahuah thy Elohim, to keep all his statutes and his commandments, which I commanded thee, thou and thy son and thy son's son, all the days of thy life, and that thy days may be prolonged. Hear therefore, Israel, and observe to do it, that it may be well with thee, and that ye may increase mightily, as Yahuah Elohim of thy fathers hath promised thee, in the land that floweth with milk and honey." I mean, I can go on, but it's just beautiful because this is what the Father has commanded us to do. And Ahab is just he forgot, and he's like, and he thinks it's, and he's pointing out to Elijah like he's the one that's troubling Israel, when in reality it's him. It's what he has done, forsaken the commandments of Yahuah. It's just interesting. If there's any other verses that you ladies see that pertain to how important it is to follow his commandments, please share. But I just wanted to reference that Deuteronomy chapter 6. It's a beautiful chapter. Definitely recommend anyone who's viewing this to go and read it. Okay. Thank you. We can proceed to read now, ladies. We're gonna jump into chapter 19. Still the same book, First Kings, chapter 19. Here we're gonna read verses 1 through 3. This is where Jezebel gets mentioned again.
Melinda is volunteering.
Thank you.
Okay, 1 Kings 19, verses 1 through 3. And Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done, and wherewith how he had slain all the prophets with the sword. Then Jezebel sent a messenger unto Elijah, saying, So let the mighty ones do to me, and more also, if I make not thy life as the life of one of them by tomorrow about this time. And when he saw that, he arose and went for his life and came to Beersheba, which belongs to Yehuda, to Judah, and left his servant there. Well, this was the big showdown. The showdown takes place in chapter 18 between the prophets of Baal and Elijah calling upon the name of Yahuah. I think it's a very interesting read, and it pretty much starts at around verses 19. Around verse 19 is so very important. Elijah had told the prophets of Baal. He said that there was a numerous amount of them. There was 400 which ate at the 400 that were at the groves that ate at Jezebel's table, and there was 450 of the prophets of Baal. And Elijah, he confronted them, and he said, the God, the Elohim that answers by fire, that's the God. You call on Baal. I'm just paraphrasing it shortly before you because it's not a part of our read. But he had told him, he said, you call on, on Baal, and I'll call on the name of Yahuah. And the Elohim that answers us by fire is the sovereign. So they went along with it and everything. They called Baal upon the name of their God that they believed was the true God, which was Baal. And when the name of, in English, that would be Lord or some master or something of that nature. And Elijah, he called upon the name of Yahuah. And they, the prophets of Baal, they continually called upon the name of Baal. They cut themselves, they were bleeding and all of this. And he never ever showed up. And Elijah told the servants to drench everything, drench it. Put water all around the altar and all soak it. Put water all over the place. And the Father, he answered by fire. And Elijah, he rose up in righteous indignation, and he destroyed the prophets of Baal. And when Jezebel found out about it, I mean, like, you would have think that she would say, "Oh my goodness, how did this happen?" This is, well, she was a Zidonian, and Baal was her god. That's all she knew, and her father, all of them. That was their ancestry, but she had no fear at all. She sent word to him that she was going to destroy him, And so when he got that message, he really basically, just to make it a little short, he ran for his life. And so that's where, so he ran for his life. After this great manifestation and display of Yah's sovereignty and reign with the showdown, he still wound up receiving the threat from Jezebel, so he ran for his life. And this is where these particular scriptures basically have us at.
You're muted, Letty.
Thank you. Melinda, thank you for that. And thank you for summarizing right the chapter 18, really what happened before, because it's a beautiful, and it gives us a better understanding of the context about with Jezebel and her fury, like how she responded. And it's interesting because, like, this woman here, like you had said, they follow Baal, and just as you had mentioned with, Elijah, he comes to like the prophets of Baal, and he mocks them in verse 27. He says, because like you said, they're crying out, they're cutting themselves because Baal is, they're crying out to their God, and nothing's happening. And then it's just interesting because Elijah in verse 27 says, he mocked them and said, cry out loud, for he is a god. Either he's talking, or he's pursuing, or he is in journey. Maybe he's sleeping. It's just kind of interesting how he, how he's basically telling them, like, this is, he is not the true Elohim, and it's, like you said, they drench the barrels with water, and I think you have, yeah, and so, and then you see the father, hearing Elijah, and the fire that fell, from Yahuah, that consumed the burnt sacrifices. It's just interesting. But I wanted to point out too in verse 40, since we're I think, like, you brought this section of chapter 18 to light. I wanted to point out with 40, where it says, and Elijah said unto them, take the prophets of Baal, let not one of them escape. And they took them, and Elijah brought them down to the brook of Kishon and slew them there. So he went ahead and all these prophets that were there, and I think he said 400, they were all killed, by Elijah. And so that's where it says that. So praise Abba. And then in chapter 19, on those verses, thank you for, again, Melinda, for bringing that out. And now Jezebel is angry, and she's like, well, I'm going to slay that. I think she says this day tomorrow, or I'm sorry, I think she speaks to Elijah, or not speaks to him, but she sends a messenger unto Elijah that she's going to do to him what he did to her prophets. So, praise Abba. We can continue on with verses, let me see here.
Sister Diane has a comment.
Oh, sure.
What were the verses we were going to continue with?
I was going to jump into chapter 21, but I was just wondering, maybe, like, if it would be best to just kind of finish chapter 19, like summarizing it. It doesn't speak on Jezebel. It speaks more on Ahab coming to Yahuah and telling him, speaking to him and saying, look, she's after me now. I'm gonna get killed. You know, she's gonna kill me. And coming to him. And I was wondering, I mean, I don't know if it's, what do you think? Should we just read it through?
Well, no, we don't have to, but I just wanted to say if he has something for us to do, if we're in his will to fulfill a mission, we are going to fulfill that mission. And it wasn't Elijah's time yet to be taken up. So what did he do? He refreshed him. And this is just taking it on through chapter verse 7. We don't really have to finish, you know, but I thought this part was important because Heavenly Father, rather than saying, okay, Elijah, well, I know this is too much for you, so just go on and sit down and I'll call somebody else. No, he refreshed him once again, you know, and what he gave him was plenty. In verse 5, let's see. Okay, let's see. In verse 6, it says, well, 5 starts in 5, an angel, that's in verse 5, and brought him cake baked on coals and a jug of water at his head. And he ate and he drank, and he lay down and went to sleep. And then in verse 8, that of food that was given to him, just the bread and the water, carried him 40 days and 40 nights. You know, so even that could be significant. So,
Amen.
Heavenly Father can give us enough to carry us over to do His will. Amen.
Amen. Melinda, did you still have a comment?
So, following up with what Sis Diane said, you know, yeah, Jezebel was a very, very wicked, controlling type person. Even her husband, he tells her, Akab, he tells her what the situation is. Like, she's the man, he's the woman, you know. But with Elijah, after he's running for his life and all of this, hiding out in the cave and all this is still going on in this same chapter. There's this strong wind, then there's this earthquake, and then there's this I think the fire. After that, there was the fire and all of that, and y'all wasn't in any of that. But then there was this still small voice, and the Father spoke to Elijah. After he spoke to Elijah, you know, and the thing about Elijah is like, I was zealous. I was just jealous of the way they were treating you, the way they were serving these false gods and everything. And I just got so fed up and tired of it. So I just went out and just destroyed all of them and everything. But then the Father tells him, he go and anoint so-and-so, Jehu, king of Israel. So the Father's plan is still going on. His plan is still going forth. Even though Elijah's afraid, and even though all this Jezebel is chasing him for his life, he's not really concerned with all of this. You know, he didn't speak to him in the strong wind. He didn't speak to him in the earthquake. He didn't speak to him in all the fire. Some great manifestation of who he could have spoken to him. Spoke to him in a very, very still, small voice and told him what to do. Praise Yah. I used to think when I was young, used to hear that when she dressed like a Jezebel, or used to hear that. And so we used to think that the ones with the, like if a woman had on a tight red dress, like if you see a woman with like a tight red dress, short dress on, something like that, that she was, you know, trying to be a Jezebel or something like that. But then I found out that Jezebel spirit is a very, very different spirit. It's a controlling, wicked, a very wicked spirit. And you find that spirit in, you know, we always just stop at, we say the church, but this world has a whole lot of social orders that are much more integral in society and everything. And that spirit can be found anywhere where there's a controlling, manipulating spirit running rampant that's not following the Father's laws, statutes, and commandments. Praise Yah.
Praise Allah. Yes. I want to piggyback on what you just said, Melinda, and Sister Diane. So, you know what's interesting though, it's that, when I'm reading this, we have Elijah. He comes to the Father and says, "Hey, Father, Abba, like, in verse 5 it says, and he says, no, not verse 5, verse 4. He comes to him and like take away my life, like Diane said, for I am not better than my fathers. So but it's interesting because he's been fighting this fight, and he knows that Jezebel, he knows this woman is evil. She says she's going to come after me. She will come after me. But what's interesting, as Amalinda also kind of added to this discussion, is that he came to Yahuah, and Yahuah presented himself. He didn't present himself in, I think, like in the earthquake or in fire, but it was like on a small voice. And what I wanted to mention is that I wonder, because in verse 10, Elijah talks to Yahuah and says, and I'm piggybacking on what Amalinda and Sister Dan just have been talking about. But here he says, and he said, I have been very jealous for Yahuah, for the Yahuah Elohim of hosts, for the children of Israel have forsaken thy covenant, thrown thine altars, and slain thy prophets with the sword. And I am left. They seek my life to take it away. The reason I wanted to bring this up is because here we have Elijah coming to the Father and saying, and it sounds like he's thinking like he's the only one left. Like all, one of the things that Ahab did, aside from marrying this woman who follows after Baal and him worshiping, but he has committed all of Israel to sin. He has committed all of them to sin because they follow him. And so here we have Elijah telling telling Yahuah, saying, the children of Israel have forsaken thy covenant. And it says, I am the only one left. So I wonder if this is why he's like, just do away, just take away my life. I wonder if that's one of the reasons, because does he feel like he's the only one left that is after Yahuwah's own heart? But what I wanted to also mention is the Father, how gracious he is, because it hasn't been read yet, but in verse 18, after he speaks to Yahuah gives them he sends them off, or he prophesies. He tells them that he is to go and speak to that Elijah is to go and anoint Elijah and anoint a new king. He gives them these commandments. This is why he fed them this bread, so he can go for 40 days, because he's going to have a long journey. But what I wanted to say is in verse 18 is that it reads, yet I have left my 7,000 in Israel, all the knees which have not bowed unto Baal, and every mouth which has not kissed him. So it seems like Elijah was worried, he was concerned that he was the only one, like everyone has already bowed themselves to Baal. But the Father knows, he kept his remnant. And in in verse 18, he confirms, like, no, there are still children who have not bowed. And it's almost like telling him, do not worry, there's still my children who still follow me. And it's just, I think that's this beautiful verse of reassurance. Kind of reminds me of our time today, Amalinda, I'm sorry to have you on hold. Because Go ahead. I'm sorry. I said a
There's
lot.
always
Sorry.
a remnant. Somebody said that earlier.
Yes. Praise God.
Amalinda.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, I had put my hand up before you made that statement. I wanted to make sure we didn't miss that, because that is very important what you just brought up, that he had 7,000 in reserve. So it's like Elijah thought he was the only one. And then he also went on and journeyed and met up with Elisha. So not only was there the 7,000, but Elisha was the one who would eventually take his mantle. Elisha was the one that would follow him and as a great prophet, and would take over the mantle and everything. So the Father's plan was just progressing forward. All praise be to your precious name, Father. And you know, that just goes to show, I think Sis June mentioned how we can look at something from a certain perspective, and a lot of times, you know, that perspective may not be true. And in this particular point, it wasn't the man of Yah. It wasn't like Elijah correcting Obadiah. Obadiah correcting Ahab. In this particular case, it was the father correcting the prophet, letting the prophet know your perspective has to change, because my plan is going forward. Nothing is hindering my plan. And so I just wanted to, I had put my hand up before you mentioned it, because that is very important.
Praise Yah. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Um, any other comments? Anything else that we can share before we move forward? And we're gonna now go and move forward into chapter 21. And this, I do want to also mention, I believe this is going to become a part 2. So no rush. We still need to cover chapter 21, all of chapter 21. And I think it's important to cover 2 Kings, where they prophesy her death and how she died. So we will continue with chapter 21. And if I can get someone to read the first 4 verses in chapter 21. And this is still First King, the book of First King.
Can anyone read the first 4 verses?
I'll read it.
Okay.
I'll just read off the screen. And it came to pass after these things that Naboth the Jezreelite had a vineyard which was in Jezreel, hard by the palace of Ahab, king of Samaria. And Ahab spoke unto Naboth, saying, Give me your vineyard, that I may have it for a garden of herbs, because it is near my house. And I will give you for it a better vineyard than it. Or if it seem good to you, I will give you the worth of it in money. And the boy said to Ahab, you have forbidden me that I should give the inheritance of my fathers unto you. And Ahab came into his house heavy and displeased because of the word which Naboth the Jezreelite had spoken to him. For he said he would not give him the inheritance of his fathers. And he laid down upon his bed and turned away his face and would not eat bread. So, of course, we have here a spoiled king. He's not getting his way. He's not getting what he wants. We know that we're told that Ahab was one of the more evil of the kings. And so he was just spoiled. He was used to having his way, you know, and of course we had Jezebel there with him. His wife came to him and said, Why is thy spirit so sad? Thou eatest no bread. So she's really concerned of what's wrong with him. He's laying on the bed, he's pouting, you know, and he knows better, you know, than to try and buy off this man's inheritance, because it's inheritance. And that's the law, you know, that's the law set forth. in Leviticus or whatever, about the inheritance, the oldest son, whoever, they inherit the land of their father or a portion of it. And he gives, I'm not saying that correctly, but that's the law. That's the law of the land. So the guy said, well, he can't do it. And they had wants it anyway. So we just see a spoiled king here.
Thank you, sister. Yeah, I was gonna read.
Well,
Oh, I'm Melinda.
yeah.
Okay, I finally got off mute. I just want to make one point that Naboth's name, his name means fruits. So this vineyard that Ahab was coveting, he wanted it for a garden of herbs. And I just found it very interesting that the Naboth's name means fruit or fruitful. And so, it kind of reminds me, this here kind of reminded me of David with Bathsheba, with the parable that Nathan gave Bathsheba. He had Ahab, he had it all. And Naboth, he just had his little vineyard that he had inherited, that was a part of his ancestry, the legacy of his forefathers and everything. And it had this very, very special value to him. But of course, Jezebel and Ahab, they didn't see any of that. They didn't see how hard he probably, and how good, what they probably had to take care of it and make sure they keep it in the family and all that. All they knew is that they wanted it. All Ahab knew, he wanted it so bad till he actually got basically sick about it. And it just shows the power of being covetous, of wanting something that belongs to someone else, to the point that it can make somebody ill. Isn't that something? So I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you, Melinda. It's definitely interesting how he had it all, and he was sick to his stomach that he couldn't eat because he couldn't have a portion of Naboth, his land. But I wanted to read Leviticus chapter 25, where it talks about that, about the land. It says, and I'm in Leviticus chapter 25, verses 23, and it says, "The land shall not be sold forever, for the land is mine. For ye are strangers and sojourners with me, and all the land of your possession ye shall grant a redemption for the land." And it goes on and says, like, if thy brother be waxen poor and has sold away some of his possessions, and if any of his kin come to redeem it, then shall he redeem that which his brother sold. And if the man have none to redeem it, and himself be able to redeem it, then let him count the years of the sale thereof, and restore the overplus unto the man to whom he sold it, that he may return it unto his possession. So it's just interesting, like, how the Father is, again, here's the commandment, that we're in, and like it was brought out, Naboth, he was following that commandment. He knew that Yahuah forbid it me in verse 3. But it's beautiful, what was brought out right now from Sister Sister Diane and Amalinda. It's just interesting. And okay, but I just wanted to read Leviticus 25.
Time check is, we have 7 more minutes.
Oh, okay. I see 2 hands.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to keep this very short. I just wanted to piggyback again off of Sister Linda, where it said that he got sick. When she said that, I immediately thought of David. I'm not David, but who is it that raped his sister, his stepsister, Abimelech? What's his name? We just read it. He raped his sister, uh, and he was sick. He desired her, and he was sick. So his friend comes up, his cousin comes up to him and say, "Why are you laying there sick like that?" And he had everything he wanted to. He was a king's son, and he still coveted other things. Now, of course, King David wasn't sick, but he still coveted. He didn't get what he wanted. I mean, he wanted something that he really didn't. He wasn't supposed to have had. And no doubt Ahab knew the law. And of course, King David's son knew that he wasn't supposed to rape his sister. So, I just thought about that. When Sister Linda said that he actually got sick from coveting, and that just goes to show us what the sin of coveting can do. So we really have to be careful with it. It can get us in such a state. We can want something so bad. We know we're not supposed to have, so we have to really pray that thing off. We have to pray that thing off. Amen. That's it. I'll leave it alone.
And thank you. That was Amnon, and that's found in 2 Samuel chapter 13. That's for the story of Amnon and his sister Tamar.
I remember us talking about that.
Yeah.
That evil
Yeah.
lust is the word. Amalinda.
Yeah, so very quickly, the parable with Nathan. Remember when Nathan was telling David about the man that only had the one little lamb, and that's when he wanted Bathsheba. That's the parable I was talking about. But we don't have time to get back into that right now. I just wanted to make the point that also Naboth, he was a Jezreelite. This Jezreelite means God will sow. Isn't that something? His name meant fruit. We're talking about a vineyard that was so heavily coveted, and the place, his whatever his little description of who he was, his tribe or whatever, he's called a Jezreelite, and that means a Jezreelite, and almost just like Israelite, and that means God will sow. Isn't that something? I found that to be interesting. I just saw that, so I figured I'd mention it to you.
That is interesting. I like what you brought out too, Sister Letty. I was just thinking about that Levitical law. Like, I had no idea you can't, like, there's more to the story once you know that he was coveting something that the man couldn't do per Yah's commands. Like, it kind of adds to the drama, if you will.
Yeah, definitely. And if Naboth would have sold it, he would have been causing him to sin because he was not to do that. So that's interesting. But that's beautiful. Everything that's been brought out. Sister June, I wanted to find out from you, is there time to read anything else? Any verses, or how are we in time?
Well, we have 2 minutes left. So are we at a good halfway mark to pick up with part 2 next?
Yeah, definitely. So yes, for next, we can stop here. Next Friday, we'll finish the second part of Jezebel, and it's gonna just we'll read all of chapter 21, and after that, I have here we are gonna jump into the second book of Kings, chapter 9, and it's gonna be verses 1 through 10, and then verses 30 to 37. So I think that should work out. But praise Allah, thank you, ladies, for just coming together and just reading these verses in this set apart day, and just being able to for us to come together and edify one another. Praise Allah. So this is going to complete the first part of Jezebel. Shalom. Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom. We pray this video is helpful to your journey in the truth. Remember to be like the Bereans in Acts 17:11, who received the word with all readiness of mind, then searched the scriptures to see if what they heard was true. We have studies for the whole family, including children, every week. To learn more, visit assemblyofyahuah.com. Use the Join tab to express interest in participating. Use the Give tab to help support biblical assembly needs. To be notified of new videos, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Trust in Yahuah with all your heart. Lean not to your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will direct your path. Much love and Shalom.